Previous Skies Above games focused on fighter versus bomber combat, and when dogfights occurred, you could often resolve them with a single die roll on an aerial combat table. In Skies Above Britain, the game is still about intercepting incoming bomber raids, but German bombers have weak defensive armament, and they depend much more on escorting fighters for protection. That's why Skies Above Britain moves the fighter versus fighter aspect to the foreground and gives it a new thrilling subsystem of its own. What can trigger a dogfight? Dogfights can break out in many different ways and at many different times during gameplay. When your patrolling squadron is on station, expecting an incoming raid, the Messerschmitt's event chit might be revealed on the raid track. One unengaged RAF fighter section or single RAF fighter gets bounced by Me-109s. Here's another way a dogfight can happen. Now your squadron has been vectored to the incoming raid and has it in sight. You can order various planes in your squadron to attack the bombers with a bomber's order, engage the escorting German fighters with an escort's order, or move around the bomber formation to a better position, and that's a cruise order. If you engage the escorting German fighters, you're starting a dogfight intentionally. This isn't always a good idea since you're usually outnumbered and the German fighters have the edge in fighter versus fighter combat. But when you do engage escort, it's probably because you want the dogfight to keep the escort busy while your other fighters try to reach the bombers. Even then, your fighters with an order to attack bombers have to make a die roll check to accomplish it. A poor result means your fighters fail to intercept the bombers, and they get intercepted by German fighters instead. So that's a second way a dogfight can happen. Let's say you give one of your RAF sections a cruise order to move to a better position around the formation. Well, they're not immune from attack by German fighters either. A die roll check tells you whether the effort to reach a different position around the bomber formation is successful. If it fails, get ready to dogfight with German fighters. Air combat tends to fling aircraft all over the sky. You'll often have a fighter that gets separated and loses contact with the bomber formation. In that case, you can try a chase action. That will let you catch up to the battle, and if the chase attempt fails, that's right, German fighters, dogfight. If that's not enough for your pilots to worry about, there's the German Channel Patrol. These are fresh formations of Me-109s that usually lurk high over the English Channel. They give the German bombers protection on their route home to France. But every now and then, the Channel Patrol likes to swoop in over England and hunt British fighters. If it does, expect a dogfight with the Channel Patrol. How is a dogfight set up? This is where the Squadron Display comes in. This play aid not only shows how your squadron's 12 planes are organized and who's flying each plane, it also serves as a top-down diagram of your squadron's tactical situation during a dogfight. Over the course of the dogfight, markers representing various numbers of German fighters appear and disappear in front of your planes or behind them, heading toward you or away from you. The relative position of bogies may change as your planes maneuver during a dogfight, and as the Germans maneuver against you. During the action, some of your fighters may become loose and separate from their formation. And it's always a fluid combat, as new bogies may show up to join the dogfight, or perhaps other RAF fighters come to help out. How does the game simulate the dogfight? In real life, and in Skies Above Britain, the first key to winning the fighter versus fighter combat is advantage. The advantage one fighter might have over another in real life depends on constantly changing variables of physics and geometry, involving things like the plane's relative speeds, differences in potential energy, and their relationship in 3D space. Some air combat board games try to model all those things directly. In Skies Above Britain, we don't. Because whether a game models them in detail, or reduces them to a die roll, eventually it all boils down to the same yes-no result. Either you have advantage, or the bogey does. In some cases, let's say you're attacked by the Luftwaffe's Channel Patrol, the German fighters automatically start the dogfight with advantage. Other times, like when you send fighters to engage escort, you'll check a table that takes various pros and cons into account and roll a die to determine which side has advantage. Depending on which side has advantage, a dogfight starts with the draw of an RAF advantage card or a Luftwaffe advantage card. Here's an example. Let's say your RAF squadron's blue flight of Spitfires has an engage escort order. Blue section attacks ME-109s that are in the high escort station. The die roll on the engage escort table goes badly, and the German fighters win advantage. Draw a Luftwaffe advantage card. On the left, the advantage card will show how many German fighters appear and where they appear in relation to the British formation that drew the card. This advantage card shows a pair, or Rote, of German fighters is coming at us head-on. And, at the same time, our blue section is being tailed by a foursome, a Schwarm, of German fighters as well. Besides the head-on situation and the tailed situation, there's one other possible situation in a dogfight, and that's a tailing situation. Here's an RAF advantage card that shows what a tailing situation looks like. Back to our example. We place the specified number of German fighter markers on blue section's fighter display according to the diagram on the drawn Luftwaffe advantage card. An advantage card also has an event on the right side, which you apply immediately. In this case, your blue 3 is a green pilot who's firing long bursts and quickly depletes his ammunition. He's marked low ammo. Now that the dogfight has been set up, it's played in rounds. The rounds keep going until your fighters get shot down, the enemy gets shot down or disengages, or your fighters manage to shake off the enemy. Each dogfight round you draw a dogfight card. There are 4 decks of dogfight cards. Each deck corresponds to your British aircraft type and the tactical situation. The combat with head-on German fighters always gets resolved first, and after that we resolve the combat with the German fighters we're being tailed by. So first, we draw a card from the Spitfire head-on and tailing deck. When we reveal it, you can see it's a dual-use card for either a head-on or a tailing situation, so you're only going to read from the tailing side or the head-on side at any one time. The blue silhouettes along the top row represent the German fighter type, ME-109s or ME-110s. The yellow silhouettes along the right column represent how many British fighters are engaged in this dogfight. Use the top cell with the 3 yellow planes when you've got a section engaged, as we do here, and use the bottom cell when you've only got 1 fighter engaged. Cross-referencing the ME-109 column with the section row, we get a cell containing 3 different icons. Each icon has a specific effect in the dogfight. All 3 are applied simultaneously and immediately. There's an Icons Explained play aid that shows you all the icons and their effects. But you'll find that the graphic design, a bullet icon representing low ammo for example, makes them easy to understand. The red boxed silhouette with a slash through it is a vanish result. This vanish result means 1 German fighter marker in the head-on position is removed. That means the pair of 109s at 12 o'clock flashes past us with guns blazing, and in the blink of an eye they're gone. But there's also a hit icon, meaning the Messerschmitt's deadly 20mm nose cannons have hit one of blue section's fighters on the way past. Which fighter got hit? Check the die roll range on the squadron display, just below blue section, and roll the D12 die. We roll a 3, so it's blue 2 that takes the hit. A hit marker is immediately drawn at random and placed with blue 2. It's a wing 5 marker. We know the German round struck blue 2's wing, but we won't discover the full effect of the hit until a bit later. And finally, there's the silhouette showing 2 black planes. That's a reinforcements icon. It means a new pair of Messerschmitt 109s appear. And because of the way the silhouettes are facing, they appear in the tailed position. A new marker with 2 109s reinforces the existing marker in the tailed position, so blue section is now being tailed by 6 German fighters. Next, the tailed combat gets resolved. But there's one thing to do first. When an RAF fighter or section in a dogfight is tailed, you first select a maneuver to make. There are 3 maneuver options: evade, slip, or turn. I won't go into the details and mechanics of each one here, but maneuvers are an area where you get to make some meaningful tactical choices. Do you just want to try and escape to end the dogfight? Do you want to get into a turning fight to complicate the enemy's shot and gain a firing angle on them? Or do you want to try slipping one fighter in behind the enemy to turn the tables on them? Blue section is outnumbered now, so evade seems like the smart move. When you've selected an evade maneuver, you get to draw 2 dogfight cards and apply just whichever card you prefer. We draw 2 cards from the tailed deck. Let's compare the cards. Reading the cell in the upper left, we can see the card on the left would bring even more German reinforcements to the dogfight. We want to shake off our pursuers, so for that reason alone, we pick the right-hand tailed card and discard the other. We apply the results of the chosen tailed card. The cartouche shape at the top of the cell highlights all the results that would apply if we had chosen a slip maneuver, but we chose an evade maneuver, so we can ignore those results inside the cartouche. This hit result does apply. We roll a die to select which blue section plane gets hit, and it's a 9, our low ammo green pilot, Blue 3. Blue 3 draws a fighter hit marker, and it's a wing 8. The procedure for an evade maneuver now has us reduce one tailing German fighter marker. We get to select which one, so we choose to reduce the pair marker to a single plane. Next, because we're in an evade maneuver, we can have our RAF blue section lose contact. This means moving blue section out of contact with the rest of its squadron in the battle around the bomber formation. What happens to the 5 remaining German fighters who were tailing us? Our move to the lost contact area in an evade maneuver allows us to reduce the tailing Germans once again. So now, that lone German fighter behind blue section goes away. Is this dogfight over? No. There's still a swarm of German fighters tailing blue section, which so far has taken 2 hits and has 1 pilot low on ammo. The 4 German fighters follow blue section into the lost contact area. We move the blue section marker to lost contact, but we can leave the German fighter markers here on the section display to help us remember the section is still engaged and being tailed. It looks like blue section is having a rough time, but remember, blue section's aim was to engage the escorting 109s in high station and to tie them up in a dogfight so that our other fighters might get through to the bombers. That's working exactly as we hoped. We have resolved this first round of the dogfight. That's because dogfight cards have been drawn for all the combats involving blue section, the head-on combat, and then the tailed combat. This dogfight will continue for 1 or more additional rounds, but those rounds will happen later in this game turn. Right now, all that's left to do before moving on is to conduct hit checks for Blue 2 and Blue 3. That means rolling a d12 and comparing the result to the number on the fighter's hit marker. A roll less than the marker number triggers the effect, which would be a catastrophic hit to the fighter. A roll equal to or greater than the number on the hit marker means it was a trivial hit and has no effect. First, we'll check the wing hit on Blue 2. The roll is 2, and that's less than the number 5 on the marker, so it's a catastrophic wing hit. Blue 2 goes to the wing hit area of the fate box. It's only after the squadron completes the patrol and gets back to base that we learn whether this man managed to bring his damaged plane home safely. If he crashed, a post-patrol die roll will show whether he survived and whether he was killed or was injured and has a chance to return. And finally, we check the wing hit for Blue 3. The roll is a 10, a trivial hit. So, Blue 2 has a little more ventilation in his Spitfire's wing, but otherwise he's unharmed and still in the dogfight.